Okay, so now I'll demonstrate how to do the dimension setup. Like I said, the dimension setup is probably the hardest part of this lab. So type in dim style. You have your standard. So click on standard and then modify. We'll make the changes similar to how we were doing it last week. Same setup as last week. Okay, this is for symbols and arrows. For text. Okay, that's for text. Finally, we have our primary units. Just turn on your zero suppression. Then click OK. Okay, so we're just changing the lines, symbols and arrows, text, and the primary units. So when everything's done, click OK. Now we'll click on standard and then create a new. So click on new. As the name, we'll change this to style 2. And then continue. In the fit, we change it from either text or arrows to just arrows. The text placement to over dimension line with leader. Finally, the text, change the alignment to horizontal. Okay, so this is a copy of standard, changing the name to style 2, and just changing the fit and the text. Once that's done, click OK. Click on standard again. We're going to create another copy. So we'll go to new. Okay, so this new copy, we're gonna change this name to diameter. First change we'll make will be the lines. So click on lines. Then on the suppression of extension line 1 and extension line 2. In the text, change the alignment to horizontal. And in the fit, change the text placement to over dimension line with leader. And in the fine tuning, turn on draw dimension line between extension lines. Once it's done, click OK, click on standard and set current. Then you can close your dimension style manager. You can start your dimensioning now. So previously we were using this dimension tool, and this is a smart dimension. What this does is it selects from the different types of dimension that you have. It selects the best option. So sometimes the software will get it wrong. Sometimes, let's say for this radius, it's giving us as a linear dimension where we want a radius dimension. So it's not always a good idea to use the smart dimension tool. Sometimes it's best to choose the type of dimension that you want to use. So to do that, you can go to annotate or just here in your annotation tab if you have it. So go to annotate. If you click on the small dimension down here that says linear, there's a little arrow that's next to it. These are all the different dimension tools that we have. So the dimension style and the dimension tool are a bit different from each other. Dimension style is where you set up the size of your arrows, the placement of your text, all those kinds of things. And the tool is the style of dimension, or not the style of dimension, the type of dimension. So you have linear dimensions, aligned dimensions, angular, then you have arc length, radius, diameter, and then jogged and coordinate, ordinate. These ones here we won't be using so much. Neither will be using arc length really. Most popular ones we'll be using are the linear, the aligned, the radius, and the diameter. So first select the linear, and you can go ahead and start putting in all of your linear dimensions. Just take note that the style that we're using to start off with is standard, the standard style. So you select your reference points, place your dimensions. Please note when I'm doing my dimensioning, I'm making sure that there's always a gap between the drawing line and my dimension line. And also I'm in layout space. I'm not in model space. So it says here paper. That's what you want to be in when you're doing your dimensioning. You don't want to be in model. You want to be in paper space. And I'm choosing reference points, which will allow me a little bit of a break from the drawing. By break, I mean, when I put my dimension in, there is a gap between my drawing and the dimension line. And that's what we are looking for when we're doing our marking on your dimensions. So if you were to select, for that 50, you were to select these points. You use this to select here and here. You see that there's no gap between your center line and your dimension line. This is incorrect. There should be a gap. There's a gap down here, but there's no gap here. That's why when we dimension, we always recommend that you select points, don't select lines. So let's say for this 28, yeah, I won't select this line and this line because there will be no gap. What I'll do instead is I will select the end points of those lines. So this point and this point. Now if you zoom in, there is a gap now. All right, so if you get a comment when you get this lab marked no dimension break or no dimension spacing, that's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Sorry. It's not changing the thickness. Turn on your line width thickness. Yeah. So these labs will be probably posted up on Monday. Sorry, that no was the reply to the fact that the dimension style settings is not in the handout. But for your previous question, yes, it will be posted on Monday. So there's a reason we don't give you the dimension style settings in your handout. That's because we want you guys to learn or to understand what all those settings mean. Okay, if we just give you the numbers every week and you just put them in, you only know how to dimension style for that particular setting. Like in this case right now, there are 3 different dimension styles. And there's a reason why you have 3 different dimension styles. And we want you guys to be able to understand and know how to set up your own styles for when it comes to your project. Just for the sake of this 3-hour lab, I can't go through each style and why we're changing it to this and why we're changing the size to that. So ideally, I'd like you guys to go away and try and figure out for yourselves what each of those numbers mean, what each of those settings means. And if you have any questions after you've done your own research, I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, we only have 5 minutes left in the session. So I'll quickly demonstrate how to dimension these diameters. And if you miss it now, the recording will be up by Monday. So the dimension style we'll be using for the diameters is an aligned dimension. So instead of linear, we're going to select aligned. I'm going to dimension my 38 first. What I'll do is I'll change my style from standard to diameter. I'll select one side of the circumference, move my mouse through the center to the opposite side until I hit this symbol, the perpendicular symbol. I'll click. Perpendicular. And then the third click will be at the center of that circle to place my text at the center, place my arrows going through the center. So again, aligned, aligned, one side of the circle, through the center to the opposite side, until I hit that symbol, that perpendicular symbol. And then the third click is at the center of the circles. Last one for the 75. So I have my 3 dimensions, but they're stacked on top of each other. So I'll click on my first one, the 56, click at the center square and extend that beyond the drawing. Okay, that's to extend my dimension text beyond the shape. Now I'll just double click on each one of these numbers and I'll come into the text editor, click on the symbol and then add a diameter symbol. I'll do the same for all of my diameters. Okay, that's for adding these symbols as well as the aligned dimension. This dimension is currently passing through the 41. What we want to do is we want to create a break, a dimension break, so that the line here, this extension line, doesn't pass through that 4. What we're going to type in is we're going to type in dim break. Select the dimension to break. So we're going to select the 113. The dimension to break it will be the 41. And it breaks the dimension. Next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a uniform spacing between the 28 and the 113, the 28 and the 50, and the 10 and the 75. So I'll type in dim space, select the base dimension. So my base dimension will be the 28. The dimension to space will be the 113. Enter. I'll enter my space value of 12 and then enter again. So now that's a distance from this 28 dimension line to this 113 dimension line of 12 millimeters. So again, for this 28 and this 50, dim space, select the base, the 50, enter the value, enter again. Okay, I'm sorry that the last section is a bit fast, but from future labs, this is kind of the pace that we're going to have to be working at. Next week, we have a lot more complicated activity. And we have to try to complete this in 3 hours. So if you can, even after you submit, please just try and practice doing this, or even give a lab for an attempt. Dim break. Okay, one of the last steps to do is just to make these 10s horizontal. So I'll click on each one of my 10 dimensions. I'll change the style from standard to style 2. And then I can click on each text and drag the 10 beyond the extension line. Okay, the last one dimension to add is our radius. So instead of using a line dimension, we're going to use the radius dimension. We'll select our radius. So we have 2 radiuses here. Select our 2 radiuses. Make sure the style is set to diameter for the radius. Okay. And if you want to be fancy, you can change the style, the direction of this arrow. Just type in flip. flip the arrow the opposite side. Final step is to modify our multi-leader. So multi-leader, first we'll click on the multi-leader style manager. We'll go to modify. We'll change the text height to 2.5. And the leader format will change the symbol to none. And the break size to 3.75. Once that's done, we can go ahead and add our multi-leader. So click on the number 19, drag down. We can type in our text. So our text is semi-circular slot. That is the final step for this lab activity. Okay. Thank you very much for attending. Remote students, just want to remind you again that your submission date, even though for the face-to-face guys, it's next week, Saturday, your submission date may be later in the semester. Also, if you have any questions related to AutoCAD, please don't hesitate to, well, I don't have my staff credentials yet, but once I do, please don't hesitate to contact me or either your tutor or anywhere else who might be able to help you. So, thank you very much. Yes, you'll be having a test. For the remote students, I'm not quite sure how it will be given to you guys, but there is an MST coming up. The topics I'm not quite sure on. Maybe Dr. Kabir might be able to expand more on that in your lectures. But if it's not next week, then it'll be after the break, so week 8. An announcement will be made via Moodle. Thank you very much, guys.